A mother blinded by grief. A little girl who no longer speaks. A man who should have protected, but became the reason she broke. Clara only wanted to start over after losing her husband. But when her new partner begins to harm 6-year-old Anna, everything unravels. One terrible moment by the pool forces Clara to face the truth. What follows is a battle not just for justice, but for healing, for voice, for light after darkness. Stay with us as we follow a journey of silent strength, a child who speaks without words, and a mother who learns that love means protection, even when it hurts. Before we begin, tell us, how far would you go to save someone you love? The sound was sharp, not a splash, but something heavier, sudden, wrong. Clara's body reacted before her mind did, feet slapping against the kitchen floor as she rushed toward the backyard. Her heart didn't race. It stopped. Through the glass, she saw Anna floating face up in the pool, still, her small body unnaturally twisted. The pink cast on her arm half submerged and already beginning to slide off. For a split second, Clara froze. Then she saw him, Leonardo, standing by the edge of the pool. His hands were by his sides, not reaching, not calling, not even startled, just watching. The stillness of his posture made it worse. Like this was normal, expected, or even planned. Clara didn't scream, she didn't ask. She just ran. The cold water hit her legs like knives as she dove in, fully clothed, reaching Anna before she could slip beneath. Her daughter's eyes were open but blank, her lips slightly parted. The girl wasn't gasping or flailing, she was quiet, almost resigned. Clara lifted her gently, cradling the weightless frame to her chest. Anna didn't cling to her. She didn't speak, but she blinked. And that one blink, slow and broken, said everything Clara had refused to see. By the time she climbed out of the water with Anna in her arms, Leonardo was lighting a cigarette. Not even a trace of panic lined his expression. She slipped, he said flatly, as if announcing a weather update. Clara's clothes dripped onto the patio stones, but she barely noticed. She laid Anna down carefully on a towel, checking her breathing, her pulse, steady, thank God, and then turned to face him. "You watched her fall?" she asked, her voice shaking with something deeper than rage. Leonardo shrugged. "Kids are clumsy." Clara looked back at Anna, whose eyes were now fixed on a single point in the sky, unmoving. No tears, no tremble, nothing. Clara felt her own breath catch. Something was wrong. Not just with this moment. Something had been wrong for weeks. Bruises brushed off his clumsy stumbles. Anna's refusal to be alone with him. Her silence tightening, deepening. All the signs she'd rationalized. All the nights she told herself Anna just missed her father. Now, with her daughter's wet, fragile hand limp in her own, every excuse Clara had clung to collapsed. The truth had been speaking all along, in Anna's silence and her avoidance in her shrinking world. Clara had simply refused to listen. Why was she alone outside? Clara asked, forcing her voice to steady even as her knees threatened to give out. Leonardo exhaled smoke slowly, eyes narrowed. "She wanted son," he said. "I thought it'd be good for her." He was lying. And suddenly, Clara knew that he had lied before, about the medicine Anna had refused, about the time she got scared and locked herself in the bathroom, about why her drawing pad had been torn. Her mind replayed it all in cruel flashes, but now wasn't the time to argue. Anna needed her. She crouched again beside her daughter and wrapped her own soaked sweater around her small body. "We're going to the hospital," Clara said. "Now," Leonardo scoffed. "She's fine. Don't be dramatic." That word, dramatic, ignited something inside Clara. She looked up at him, truly looked, and saw not the man she had tried to love, not the partner she had defended, but a stranger, a threat. "You watched her drown," she whispered, "and you did nothing." Her voice cracked, not from weakness but from clarity. That was the moment she stopped doubting. That was the moment she understood. She had allowed danger to live inside her home. Anna flinched when Leonardo stepped closer. Just a twitch, barely noticeable, but to Clara it screamed louder than words. She stood, positioning herself between them without thinking. Leonardo raised his hand slightly, a mockery of surrender. "You're overreacting," he said, tone calm but eyes sharp. Clara had once thought that calmness meant control, stability. Now she saw it for what it was. Coldness, indifference. She turned back to Anna, who was watching her now, really watching her. Those wide eyes, always so quiet, were searching Clara's face for something. Assurance, protection, maybe even a trace of belief. And in that look, Clara saw a reflection of all the times she had chosen to believe a man over her own instincts. Not this time. "Get out," she said, low and deliberate. Leonardo didn't move. "Clara, out." Her voice rose, hard and breaking. "Get out of this house. Now." A pause. Then he chuckled, tossed the cigarette into the pool, and walked inside. She didn't follow. She just stood there, shivering, soaked to the bone, and more awake than she had been in months. Anna's fingers curled around Clara's hand. Weak, but intentional. Clara gripped back. Later, after Leonardo had slammed the front door and driven away without a word, Clara sat beside Anna on the bathroom floor, gently patting her dry. The girl didn't speak, but her eyes followed Clara's every movement. For the first time in weeks, there was no fear in them, only exhaustion and the faintest shadow of something else. Trust. Clara wrapped her daughter in a blanket and carried her to bed. She stayed there, sitting at the edge of the mattress, watching the slow rise and fall of Anna's chest. It hit her then, all the times Anna had tried to communicate through gestures, drawings, withdrawals, and how little she had understood. Clara hadn't just failed to protect her. She had silenced her pain with her own longing for stability, for a new beginning that never truly included her daughter. But now Clara wasn't trying to rebuild a family. She was trying to protect one, and that made all the difference. That night, Clara didn't sleep. She sat beside Anna, one hand resting gently on her back, and thought about everything she had missed, everything she would no longer ignore. The morning came slowly, but Clara didn't feel tired. She brewed a pot of coffee, but never drank it. Instead, she walked back out to the pool, barefoot on the wet tiles. The surface had stilled again, reflecting the pale sky above, calm as if nothing had happened. But something had happened. Something irreversible. Clara stared at the water, then at the towel still lying where she had placed Anna the day before. Her chest tightened, not with panic, but with purpose. She turned and walked inside, her steps steady. Anna was awake, sitting up, her eyes on the doorway. Clara knelt in front of her, brushed a strand of damp hair behind her ear, and whispered, "It won't happen again. I swear to you." Anna didn't speak, but she blinked once, slowly. And once again, in that blink, Clara saw everything: fear, hope, and something brand new. The beginning of belief. She had pulled her daughter from the cold water, but she had rescued something else too. Her own clarity, her own role, her own voice. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough to help Anna find hers again. That night, long after she had tucked Anna into bed and sat silently beside her until the child's shallow breathing eased into sleep, Clara stood in the hallway staring at the dark outline of the living room. The glow of the monitor on her desk seemed to beckon her like a challenge. She hesitated, not because she didn't know what she might find, but because part of her already did. That instinct she had buried under trust, under love, under second chances. It had been trying to warn her for weeks. But tonight, it no longer whispered. It screamed. Clara walked to the desk and sat down. Her hands moved on their own, opening the home surveillance software. The system had always been in place. Leo himself had installed extra cameras when they moved in together, under the guise of protection. Now she saw that as ironic. What was meant to make her feel safe had become the tool of her own awakening. She logged in, typed the master password, and held her breath. The screen flickered to life. Most folders were empty or wiped. Storage error, corrupted file, access denied. It reeked of deletion. But Clara knew herself, and she knew she had saved something. She navigated to a backup path buried 3 folders deep, an old habit of hers, just in case. There it was. A folder labeled temp_0412, a name bland enough to avoid attention. She clicked it open. Inside, 3 video files. No dates, no thumbnails, just raw footage. Her hand hovered over the mouse for a moment before she clicked play. The first video opened with no sound. The image was from the hallway near Anna's room. Clara watched as Leonardo entered the frame. Anna sat on the floor, coloring quietly. Clara could see the soft curve of her daughter's back, hunched and focused. Leonardo approached. He said something. The camera had no mic and Anna froze. She didn't look up. He said it again, louder, gesturing toward the door. Anna stayed seated. Clara watched, breath shallow, as Leonardo's hand darted forward. He didn't hit. Not yet. He snatched the paper from her lap and tore it in 2. Then he grabbed her small box of crayons and tossed it across the hallway. Anna recoiled, but still didn't move. Leonardo bent lower, now yelling. Clara could see it. The violence wasn't in his fists, but in the deliberate dismantling of her daughter's space. Her safety. It was psychological warfare disguised as discipline. The second video was worse. Clara didn't need sound to hear the screams in her head. The feed was from the kitchen. Anna sat at the table eating cereal with shaky hands. Leonardo stood at the sink watching her. He poured something into a glass, Clara couldn't tell what, and slammed it next to her bowl. Anna flinched. He spoke again. She didn't respond. He yanked the spoon from her hand, pointed at the glass. She hesitated. He stepped closer, towering, his mouth forming harsh syllables. Finally, Anna drank. Almost immediately, she coughed violently, grabbing at her throat. Clara leapt from her chair in real time, even though the scene was from 2 weeks ago. She hit pause. Her hands trembled. Her stomach turned. That glass, she remembered that morning. Anna had vomited soon after, and Leonardo had said she probably ate something bad. Clara had accepted that. She had believed him. Now she saw the cruelty in every small detail she had ignored. The tension in Anna's shoulders. The way she avoided his gaze. How she never ate when he was in the room. These weren't isolated incidents. These were patterns, and Clara had turned away from them all. There was one more file. Clara didn't want to open it. She already knew what it would contain, but she had to. For herself. For Anna. For the part of her that still doubted whether she was overreacting. The last video was from the guest room, the only camera Leonardo didn't know about. Installed by Clara months ago after she had caught him shouting during a phone call and something inside her had stirred with unease. The footage was darker, grainy, but clear enough. Anna stood near the door trying to leave. Leonardo blocked her path. She said something. Clara could see her lips move. He pushed her back, not hard but with intention. She stumbled. He leaned in, hissed something close to her ear, and then turned away as if dismissing her like a servant. Anna didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just stopped. Stopped trying. She sat on the floor and folded into herself, her little body shrinking inwards. Clara let the footage play until the end. No violence that would leave marks. It's just the slow erosion of a child's spirit. That was the worst part. That was the part no one would believe unless they saw it. And now Clara had... She leaned back in the chair, eyes burning. It wasn't just about the videos. It was about the months of denial, of letting her desire for companionship blind her to her daughter's pain. It was about trusting someone who never earned it, and gaslighting her own instincts into silence. Clara wasn't just angry at Leonardo. She was furious with herself. She had protected the wrong person. But the guilt couldn't be allowed to paralyze her. She minimized the screen, backed up the files, and uploaded them to the cloud. Then she grabbed a notebook from the drawer and began writing everything. Dates, incidents, inconsistencies. A timeline of all the red flags she had once dismissed. She would not be caught unprepared again. If Leonardo tried to twist the narrative, she'd have truth on her side. Not just accusations, evidence. Clara's hands no longer trembled. They moved with certainty. This time she was not going to be silent. She was not going to let Anna be invisible. And she would not let the damage grow further under the roof she had vowed to make safe. As the last video file finished uploading, Clara stood and walked to Anna's bedroom. The little girl was still curled up in bed, Charlie the teddy bear tucked under her chin. Her face was peaceful now, unaware of the war her mother had just waged on her behalf. Clara sat beside her, gently brushing back a lock of hair. "I saw it all," she whispered, not expecting a response. "I saw everything, and I'm so sorry I didn't see it sooner." Anna stirred, but didn't wake. Clara leaned back in the chair, arms crossed, mind racing. There would be more to do, lawyers, therapists, maybe even courts, but this was the moment everything changed. She had finally looked the truth in the eye. And now it was impossible to look away. Clara wasn't just mourning what Leonardo had done. She was mourning who she had been while it happened, the woman who let silence explain away suffering. But that woman was gone. And the new one, the one sitting in the dark, guarding her daughter with the weight of truth, was ready for everything that would come next. Leonardo wasn't a mistake. He was a threat, and she had been complicit in silence. Clara didn't waste time. That morning, after Anna finally fell back into a restless sleep, she picked up her phone and called her sister Marina. There was no preamble, no attempt to mask the tremor in her voice. "I need you to come over. Today." "It's about Anna," she said. The line went silent for a second before Marina's answer came, steady and urgent. "I'll be there in an hour." Clara didn't cry. She couldn't afford it anymore. Her emotions were being rerouted into action, into resolve. When Marina arrived, Clara didn't even say hello. She pulled her into the kitchen, sat her down, and opened the laptop. She played only one video, the hallway footage, and then shut the screen. That was enough. Marina stared blankly at the table, eyes wide, lips parted, struggling to find words. "Jesus Christ, Clara," she finally muttered. "You have to go to the police." Claire shook her head. Not yet. I want to do this right. I need someone who can navigate this without risking it falling apart on a technicality. She handed Marina a business card. He's a friend of Daniel's family lawyer. Trustworthy. Marina looked at her sister with something like awe and guilt. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Clara's voice broke for the first time that day, because I didn't want to believe it myself. The lawyer Andre was calm and methodical, but his expression tightened as he reviewed the files. Clara watched his jaw clench subtly while viewing the footage. He didn't try to sugarcoat anything. These videos are admissible, but we'll need more character witnesses, behavioral reports, any medical records showing signs of injury. Clara nodded. She's seen 2 pediatricians this year. I'll get the records. Andre looked at her, his tone firm but not cold. We have a strong case, but be ready. He'll try to paint you as unstable, as emotional, as a mother projecting guilt. We need to be precise. Clara exhaled slowly. She could feel the years of self-doubt bubbling under her ribs, but she pushed them down. I don't care what he says about me. I just need them to see her. She gestured toward the hallway, where Anna sat quietly in the corner with her bear, drawing circles on a napkin. Andre followed her gaze. They will, he said, but she won't testify. That would be too much. Clara didn't argue. She already knew that Anna's voice would not come from her mouth, it would come from everything else. Her drawings, her silence, her reactions. And that had to be enough. Later that week, Clara sat with Anna and the therapist, a soft-spoken woman named Helena who spoke less to fill silence and more to wait through it. The sessions weren't about pushing Anna to speak. They were about making her feel safe enough to exist. Clara watched as Helena placed a tray of toy animals on the floor and simply observed which ones Anna chose. No questions. No pressure. When Anna picked the smallest elephant and placed it in the corner, facing the wall, Clara's throat tightened. The elephant like a friend? Helena asked. Anna hesitated, then slowly added a tiny fox beside it. Helena said nothing else. It was enough. After the session, while Anna napped in the waiting room, Clara asked, "Do you think she'll ever talk again?" Helena looked at her kindly. "She already is. Just not in the way you're used to." Clara didn't respond right away. She was learning, slowly. That silence wasn't emptiness, it was layered. It was filled with clues and meanings that only revealed themselves to those who listened with patience. That realization began to unearth something within her, not just guilt, but an awakening. Her daughter had been trying to speak all along. Clara just hadn't known how to hear her. That same night, as they sat down for dinner, Clara placed a plate in front of Anna and gently said, "Eat what you can, sweetie. No rush." It was a quiet invitation, not a demand. Anna picked up the fork, then set it down. She looked around, scanning the room. Leonardo wasn't there. Not anymore, but his absence didn't erase his shadow. She looked at Clara. Their eyes met. Clara didn't speak. She didn't coax. She just stayed. And something shifted. Anna reached for the bread. Clara swallowed the knot in her throat, keeping her expression neutral, but inside she was screaming. These were the moments she had to count now, the ones most people wouldn't notice. The way Anna didn't flinch when Clara stood up. The way she allowed her hand to be held for 2 whole minutes without pulling away. These fragments were testimonies. Clara wrote them down at night in a notebook, not for legal use, not for anyone else, but to remind herself that progress didn't always look like victory. Sometimes it looked like a child taking one bite of dinner. Sometimes it looked like not hiding under the bed when someone knocked at the door. And sometimes it looked like the slightest nod of trust. Andre returned with good news. A restraining order had been filed and granted. Leonardo was prohibited from approaching Clara or Anna within a 300-meter radius. "It's a start," he said, but he's fighting back. His lawyer claims you're fabricating abuse to alienate him. He's going for character assassination. Clara expected as much. She didn't flinch. We'll respond with evidence. And with silence. Anna's silence. Andre hesitated, then said, "They might argue that silence is not proof." Clara's reply came immediately. "Then they're not listening the right way." She handed over her compiled notes, each line documenting a gesture, a reaction, a change in behavior. Andre looked at the pages and nodded. This is powerful. Not traditional evidence, but it's human. And it shows a pattern. Clara had no more fear of being doubted. That part of her had drowned the day she pulled Anna from the pool. Now all that remained was the voice of a mother who had once been blind and would never be again. She wasn't just preparing a legal case. She was building a wall around her daughter with truth, with observation, and with the kind of listening that demanded no words. In the weeks that followed, the process intensified. Court documents, social worker visits, statements. But through it all, Clara remained anchored in a single truth. Anna was telling her story, whether or not anyone else could hear it. She told it through drawings, angry swirls turning into softer shapes. She told it through her body, no longer curled tight like a leaf, but open enough to reach for Clara's hand. She told it through avoidance, still refusing to enter rooms where Leonardo had yelled. These were not coincidences. These were declarations. And finally, the justice system began to listen, and so did Clara. What had once been a mother desperate for signs became a woman trained to decode them. Clara realized that while Anna might never recount what had happened in a courtroom, she didn't need to. Her story had been unfolding in gestures all along. Clara just had to be brave enough to read them and loud enough to speak on her behalf. It had been a quiet afternoon, one of many where silence hung like fog between them. Clara sat on the edge of the couch, carefully combing through the tangles in Anna's hair, her movements slow and deliberate. It wasn't a task, it was a ritual, one that had once been shared between Anna and her father. Daniel had always insisted on doing her hair on Sundays, calling it his secret superpower, as if tying a ribbon just right could defeat monsters. Clara had avoided this ritual for months after his death, unable to touch that memory without breaking. But now, in the soft stretch of a quiet afternoon, she felt ready. Anna sat on the floor, knees drawn to her chest, staring at nothing in particular. She didn't protest. She didn't move away. Clara saw that as a victory in itself. Gently, she ran the wide-toothed comb through her daughter's hair, careful not to pull, careful to keep her touch steady. "Daddy always started from the ends," she whispered, more to herself than to Anna. "He said it hurt less that way." Clara wasn't expecting anything. Not a word, not a smile, not even eye contact. She combed because it was an act of love. Because love, when consistent, sometimes filled in the spaces where language failed. But as she lifted a small section of Anna's hair and brushed it aside, she noticed something, an almost imperceptible twitch at the corner of her daughter's mouth. Clara paused, wondering if she'd imagined it. Then it came again. A real smile. Faint, trembling, fleeting. A smile that wasn't forced, wasn't polite. It bloomed like a crack in winter ice. Clara held her breath. Anna tilted her head slightly, as if unsure of what had just happened. Then out of nowhere, a short sound escaped her, an odd surprised noise, like a half-laugh, half-hiccup. It wasn't loud. It wasn't long, but it was unmistakably a laugh. Clara froze, comb still in hand, afraid to speak and ruin the moment. Her eyes filled instantly, and a sob slipped from her lips before she could stop it. Anna turned her head sharply at the sound. Her brows furrowed, the smile already fading, retreating into the protective stillness she had cultivated so well. Clara wiped her tears quickly and forced herself to smile through it. "It's okay," she said softly, her voice catching. "I'm not sad. That was just ... It was beautiful, Anna. You laughed. You really laughed." She placed the comb down beside her and shifted onto the floor, lowering herself to meet her daughter at eye level. "I missed that sound. So much." Anna didn't respond, but she didn't retreat either. She stared at her mother for a long, uncertain moment. Then almost shyly, she leaned her head against Clara's shoulder. Just for a second, just long enough for Clara to feel the warmth of that fragile trust being offered again. Clara didn't move, didn't speak. She let the silence remain, but this time it wasn't heavy. It wasn't tense. It was full. Later that evening, Clara told Marina about it over the phone. She laughed, she said, voice trembling. It was small, so small I almost missed it. But it was real. Marina exhaled on the other end of the line. "That's huge, Clarinha. That's not small. That's everything." Clara nodded, even though no one could see her. It felt like seeing color after living in gray. Marina paused before speaking again. "She's coming back to you, bit by bit. Don't rush it." Clara smiled faintly. "I won't. I just needed to know she was still in there. That he didn't take everything." Her sister's voice was gentle. "He didn't. And she's telling you that now. Not in words, but in pieces." Clara hung up, feeling steadier, as if the ground beneath her was finally solidifying after months of emotional freefall. That night, as she tucked Anna into bed, Clara took extra care to smooth the blanket, to brush her hand across the girl's forehead the way Daniel used to. Anna didn't speak, but she didn't turn away either. Her small fingers clutched Charlie, the stuffed bear, and her eyes followed Clara's movements with something new. Maybe not full trust yet, but interest, engagement, life. Clara kissed her forehead, whispering, "Good night, my heart." She stayed in the room longer than usual, not because she feared nightmares, but because she wanted to anchor this day in memory. a turning point, proof that the silence had begun to crack. In the middle of a silent afternoon, Anna had smiled, not as a response to words, but to the gentle touch of her mother combing her hair, just the way her father used to. The laugh was brief, almost a hiccup, but Clara cried as if it had been the loudest joy she'd ever heard. It was the first step, a piece of trust pulled from the dark. The blue notebook had been resting on the shelf in Helena's therapy room for weeks, untouched. It had been offered to Anna gently during one of her earliest sessions, not as an assignment but as an invitation. "Only if you ever feel like it," Helena had said, sliding it across the small rug where Anna often sat with her stuffed bear. Charlie perched beside her like a silent companion. Clara had watched her daughter eye the notebook every now and then, but always with hesitation, as if afraid of what it might ask of her. She never reached for it, never opened it. It remained there like a dormant possibility until something shifted. On a day that began like any other, quiet and filled with hesitant glances, Anna walked into the room ahead of Clara, sat down on the carpet, and, without prompting, reached for the notebook. Helena didn't speak. Clara didn't move. They both watched, breath caught between hope and heartbreak as the girl hugged the notebook to her chest, then slowly opened it to the first blank page. Anna sat for a long time with the pencil in her hand, motionless. Clara's heart thudded, but she remained still, letting the moment belong solely to her daughter. Helena kept her voice soft, almost distant. "You can draw anything. Anything at all. No one has to see it unless you want them to." Anna nodded faintly but didn't respond. Then, with small, careful strokes, she began to draw. It was a child's drawing, 2 stick figures holding hands. One had a long line of hair, clearly a girl. The other had a shorter figure with one of its legs bent at an odd angle. The detail was subtle but intentional. Clara's breath caught. She knew what she was looking at. Then Anna added one more thing. Above the drawing, in large, uneven letters, she wrote a single word: Leo. The letters trembled on the page as if written through a storm of memory. Clara felt like she'd been punched in the chest. She looked at Helena, whose eyes had welled up with emotion, though she said nothing. No one needed to interpret it. The truth had arrived on paper. Clara asked gently, "Can I see?" Anna hesitated. Her eyes darted between the notebook and her mother's face. After a pause that felt like eternity, she turned the notebook around and placed it in Clara's lap. Clara stared at the drawing, at the quiet pain etched into its simplicity. She didn't cry. She didn't gasp. She simply placed her hand over Anna's and whispered, "Thank you for telling me." Anna didn't speak, but she didn't pull away either. Her small fingers curled around Clara's wrist, grounding herself in the presence that had once failed her, but now stood steady. Helena finally spoke. "That's pretty brave, Anna. Drawing can say things that feel too big for voices." Anna blinked, her mouth twitching as if words might come, but instead placed the pencil down and picked up Charlie, hugging him tightly to her chest. Her silence this time felt different, less suffocating, more choice than prison. The session ended quietly. As they walked out, Clara held Anna's hand without saying much, letting the weight of what had just happened settle between them. That drawing was not just a picture. It was evidence. It was memory. But more than anything, it was movement. Until that moment, Anna had kept the monster unnamed. Now she had written his name. She had drawn his image. She had dared to confront the ghost that still lingered at the corners of her healing. Clara felt the bitter ache of guilt rise again. How had she not seen it sooner? But she reminded herself that today wasn't about her shame. It was about Anna's courage. She had chosen to face the memory not with screams or accusations, but with quiet truth in the form of graphite lines and shaky letters. Back home, Clara placed the blue notebook on the nightstand beside Anna's bed. "If you ever want to add more," she said softly, "you don't need to ask. It's yours." Anna looked at it, then at her mother, and nodded once. Clara kissed her forehead and tucked her in, sitting beside her until her breathing slowed. She didn't need the notebook to speak for Anna anymore. She would continue listening. However, her daughter chose to tell her story. That night, Clara lay awake for a long time, replaying the drawing in her mind. She didn't feel relief. Not exactly. What she felt was something deeper, a solemn understanding that healing doesn't come in one loud moment, but in thousands of quiet ones strung together, and this was one of them. During therapy, Anna was given a blue-covered notebook. For weeks, she ignored it, until the day she quietly drew a small figure beside another with a crooked leg. Above them, she wrote a name, Leo. It was the first time she had ever put on paper the shadow that stole her voice. Claire saw the drawing and needed no translation. She knew her daughter was finally remembering in order to move forward. The garden behind the house had always been a patch of forgotten earth, overgrown with weeds and half-buried memories. Claire used to avoid it, just as she avoided certain drawers in the house, certain songs on the radio. But one morning, after a quiet breakfast and a surprising request from Anna, just a small nod toward the window, Clara found herself standing at the edge of that tangled space, holding a rusted shovel in one hand and a packet of sunflower seeds in the other. "You really want to do this?" she asked gently, crouching beside her daughter. Anna didn't answer with words. She placed Charlie, the stuffed bear, beside her on the grass and reached for the hand trowel. It was difficult for her. Clara could see that. The stiffness in her right side made gripping the handle awkward, and she kept having to shift her weight uncomfortably. But she was determined. Her small hands began to dig. They worked side by side in silence for the first hour, clearing away dead roots and invasive vines. Every time Anna placed a handful of weeds into the compost bin, Clara whispered the name of a fear they were burying. "So this one is for nightmares," she said once. "And this one is for lies." Anna didn't respond, but when Clara pulled out a thorned vine and muttered, "This one is for silence," the girl looked up. Her eyes locked with her mother's for a moment longer than usual. Acknowledgement, understanding, maybe even agreement. When they reached the hard-packed earth underneath, Clara handed Anna the packet of seeds. "You choose where they go," she said. Anna took the envelope carefully and began placing them into the shallow holes they had prepared, her hands shaking only slightly now. She paused once, looked up, and pointed to the far corner where the sun hit hardest. Clara nodded. "That's where the tallest ones will grow." As the days passed, tending the garden became part of their rhythm. After breakfast, after therapy, after the occasional quiet visit to Marina's house or the courthouse, they returned to the soil. Anna never spoke, but she started to hum softly tuneless sounds that Clara recognized as the beginnings of safety. Clara brought home new flowers from a local market, marigolds, lavender, daisies. But it was the sunflowers that Anna remained attached to. She would crouch beside them daily, touching the green shoots gently, sometimes drawing them in her notebook with growing confidence. One morning she tapped Clara's shoulder and handed her a page, a drawing of their garden labeled with small shaky letters. At the bottom was a heart. Clara held the paper to her chest like it was scripture. She whispered, "You're amazing, you know that?" and kissed Anna's temple. The girl didn't smile, but she didn't turn away either. The garden became a place of quiet ceremony. Every flower planted stood for something unspoken but deeply felt. One for trust, one for memory, one for all the things Anna didn't have words for. Clara began to understand that the process wasn't about the plants. They might live, they might not, but about the act of creating something new together, about getting their hands dirty and choosing growth over avoidance. Anna started to take the lead. She would point to corners of the garden, gesture for Clara to dig there, hand her tools, even guide her hands if Clara hesitated. It was as though the girl had begun to write her story not with words, but with actions, through rows of blooming color and patches of soil that remembered everything they buried and forgave it all. On a particularly warm afternoon, Clara noticed how caked Anna's hands were with soil. She had dirt under her fingernails, on her cheeks, even on the hem of her shirt. But she didn't seem bothered. In fact, she seemed calm, focused, determined. She paused at one point, looked at her mother, and extended her hand palm open, stained with earth. Clara took it without hesitation. They sat there together, hands dirty, knees sore, backs aching, but something in Clara's chest felt light. For the first time in months, she believed that this silent, messy, slow rebuilding was working. Anna looked at one of the taller sunflower sprouts and then back at Clara. No words, just a look, but it said everything. Clara and Anna had started tending to a once-forgotten garden in the backyard. Every flower became a promise, every sunflower a choice to follow the light. Anna dug with effort, but never gave up. The dirt beneath her nails was living proof that new roots were taking hold, far from fear. Leonardo arrived at the courthouse with the same smug confidence he had once worn inside Clara's home, now cloaked beneath a designer suit and a face scrubbed of remorse. His tie was perfectly knotted, and his hair slicked back in a way that made him look like the caricature of a respectable man. Clara sat 2 rows behind the plaintiff's desk, holding Anna's hand tightly in hers. Anna, now 7, sat quietly, her back a little straighter than it had been months ago, but her grip still showed the tremble of old fears. Leonardo scanned the room as if it were a stage built for him, and when his eyes found Clara, he offered a look that mingled disdain with pity, as if she were the confused one. His lawyer rose first, opening with a rehearsed defense. "Leonardo, The victim of a scorned woman's vengeance, accused by manipulated memories, misunderstood interactions. Then came the photos, Leonardo smiling with Anna, birthday candles, family dinners. A man who harms a child does not celebrate her birthday, his lawyer insisted. Murmurs rippled through the room. Clara didn't blink. She had seen those photos too. She remembered exactly what happened once the camera was put down. Leonardo took the stand with the polished charm of someone who believed deeply in his own illusion. He spoke of love, of confusion, of betrayal. He described Clara as unstable, emotionally fragile since the loss of her husband, and called her accusations an attempt to make sense of grief. He even tried to cry. He wiped at his eyes when mentioning Anna, pausing for dramatic effect. "I loved that child," he said. "She was like my own daughter." His voice cracked on cue. The judge watched impassively. Clara, however, could feel her chest tightening with the pressure of 1,000 unsaid truths. She clenched her fists, dug her nails into her palm, grounding herself in what she knew. Because what Leonardo didn't know, what he couldn't have predicted, was that this trial wasn't about what he said. It wasn't about the photos or even the charm. It was about what the silence had recorded, what the stillness had preserved. It was about what Anna had finally chosen to reveal. When Clara's lawyer stood, the room shifted. With calm precision, he brought forward not just accusations, but data, timestamps, security logs, therapist notes, and then the videos. The courtroom's air became thinner as footage rolled silent. Grainy clips showing Leonardo's hand yanking on his arm, her recoiling, her flinching at his footsteps. There were no screams, no loud confrontations, just the cold, irrefutable choreography of fear. In one clip, Anna reached for Charlie and froze when Leonardo entered the room. In another, she refused food, her face turned away as he loomed over her. Clara couldn't watch it again. She kept her eyes on Anna, who sat still, shoulders tense. The judge paused the video midway and looked toward Leonardo, who shifted in his seat for the first time. His face flickered only for a moment, but it was there. The mask cracked. Clara saw it. So did the jury. Then came the moment Clara hadn't known how to prepare for, the moment Anna was asked to speak. Her therapist stood beside her, and the judge gave gentle reassurance. "You don't have to say much," he told her. "Just what you feel ready to say." Anna's hands clutched the edge of the witness stand as she stepped up. Her voice, when it came, was small. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but it carried a weight that stilled every breath in the room. "I remember," she said, each word like the toll of a bell. He lied. There was a beat of silence so complete it felt like time had held its breath. Clara wept quietly but completely. Anna stood a moment longer, then turned to step down. Her testimony was short, but it was everything. The truth didn't need to be shouted. It had finally been spoken. The defense tried to recover. Leonardo's lawyer argued coercion, planted memories, manipulation through grief. But the room had shifted. Something irreversible had occurred when Anna spoke. Her words, brief and plain, had undercut every rehearsed phrase, every counterfeit smile Leonardo had brought with him. The court heard not just her words, but the silence she had endured, the strength it took to speak. The judge's expression grew colder. The jury leaned forward now, not to be convinced, but to affirm what they already suspected. Clara knew it wasn't over, not yet. Legal processes moved slowly, and Leonardo's punishment would still require more hearings, more statements. But something vital had broken. His image, his illusion. And in its place, the truth, fragile but visible, had begun to rise. Leonardo showed up in court wearing a new suit and a wounded gaze. He claimed he was the target of lies, presenting old texts and cheerful photographs. But he didn't know the most powerful evidence came from elsewhere. Silent footage, undeniable records, and most of all, the quiet but resolute words from Anna's own mouth. She said, "I remember." He lied. The morning after the final hearing, Clara woke up before Anna. She stood in the kitchen, holding a cup of lukewarm coffee she had forgotten to drink, staring through the glass door that overlooked the backyard. The pool was still there. Same rectangle, same tiles, same shadow of what had happened. It hadn't been touched since the incident. It was clean now, refilled, treated. But Clara had avoided it like a scar that hadn't fully healed. She heard light footsteps behind her. Anna, still in her pajamas, stood next to her in silence, her gaze following her mother's to the water. Clara crouched to meet her, eye level. "Do you want to go there today?" she asked. Anna didn't answer at first. Her fingers gripped the hem of her sleeve, her shoulders curling inward. Clara didn't push. She waited. After a moment, Anna gave a tiny nod, barely perceptible, but it was a yes. Clara whispered, "Only if you want to," and kissed her forehead. The girl rested her head against Clara's shoulder for a second before walking toward her room, slow but steady. Later that afternoon, Clara stood by the pool holding a folded towel and the bright yellow inflatable ring Anna hadn't used in over a year. The sun was gentle, filtered through the trees, but Clara barely noticed. All she could think of was that day, that moment, that scream that never came. Anna emerged from the house wearing her one-piece bathing suit and a quiet expression. She walked carefully, dragging Charlie behind her, the bear tied around her wrist like a talisman. Clara knelt beside her. "We don't have to do this," she reminded. Anna stared at the water, silent. Then slowly she took Charlie off her wrist and placed him gently on a dry chair. Clara held out the inflatable. Anna stared at it for a second, then slipped her arms through. It fit snugly, a bit tighter than last summer. Clara held her breath. Anna stepped to the edge, her toes curling at the border. Then one foot dipped in. She flinched. Not from fear, from the shock of cold, maybe memory. But she didn't pull back. Clara sat down on the edge of the pool and waited. Anna stepped fully into the shallow end, gripping the metal railing. The water climbed up to her knees, her waist, her chest. Her breathing was slow, measured. Clara was right there, not touching her, but close enough. Anna moved her arms gently, floating within the circle of the inflatable. The last time she was in this water, she was pulled out lifeless and trembling. Today, she was choosing to return. "You're doing amazing," Clara whispered. Anna looked at her and for the first time in weeks really smiled, wide, unguarded, sincere. Clara's heart caught in her throat. She couldn't speak, couldn't move. It was just a smile, but it was everything. Anna leaned back slightly, letting the water hold her. Her eyes closed for a second. She floated there, still and light. When she opened her eyes again, Anna started moving her legs slowly, paddling forward with more confidence. She made a small circle around the shallow end, then paused near the middle, looking at Clara. "You okay?" Clara asked, unsure if she was speaking too much or too little. Anna nodded. Then, to Clara's shock, she spoke. "It's not cold," she said quietly. Clara froze. The voice was soft, dry from disuse, but steady. "It's not cold anymore." It was the first sentence she had said in days. Clara couldn't respond. She covered her mouth with her hand, tears spilling before she could stop them. Anna turned again, floating slowly, letting her fingers trail the surface like she was drawing lines on a canvas. There was no sign of fear in her now. No memory tugging her down. Just breath, water, and choice. After the trial, Clara and Anna returned to the same pool. It was empty now. Clara asked if she wanted to swim. Anna hesitated, then nodded. She put on her float, stepped in slowly, and smiled. It was the same water, the same place. But now it was a choice, not punishment. And that made all the difference. Clara didn't notice the note at first. The morning had started as usual. She'd risen before Anna, made her way quietly through the house, and begun preparing breakfast. But something about that day felt different, like a subtle shift in gravity. Maybe it was the way Anna had slept the night before, peaceful. Her arms loosely wrapped around Charlie, her breath even, her brows smooth. Maybe it was the absence of nightmares or the steady way she had brushed her teeth without needing encouragement. As Clara walked into the room to wake her, the soft rustle of the sheets revealed something unexpected. Resting gently atop Anna's pillow, half tucked under the stuffed bear's paw, was a piece of folded paper. Clara paused, her heart instantly aware of its weight before she even touched it. She reached for it slowly, as if the act itself might scare it away. Her fingers trembled slightly as she opened it, revealing the handwriting. Shaky, uneven, and unmistakably Anna's. 3 lines. Just 3. But they struck deeper than any conversation they had ever had. "Mom," it read. "I stayed. Thank you for coming back for me." Clara sank onto the edge of the bed, her knees no longer capable of holding her. The words blurred through her tears, but she didn't need to read them again to feel them. They were etched now, into her memory, her chest, her very breath. It wasn't just a thank you. It was a homecoming. It was a reckoning. Clara thought of all the nights she had failed to see what was right in front of her. Anna shrinking, Anna hiding, Anna begging without words. She remembered every time she had told herself that things would get better, that Leonardo was just adjusting, that Anna's silence was grief and not fear. She had begged for signs, and here it was, delicate and bold at once. She brought the note to her lips, kissed it like it was skinned, like it was her daughter's hand. She looked over at Anna, still asleep, her body curled in the same shape she'd taken in the womb, and whispered, "I'm not going anywhere, baby. Never again." Later that morning, Clara called her sister. She needed someone to hear what had just happened. "You won't believe this," she said, her voice catching. "Anna wrote me a note." Her sister gasped softly on the other end. "She wrote? What did it say?" Clara read it aloud. There was silence. Then quiet sobs from the other side of the line. Clara, her sister, said, "That's not just a message. That's a miracle." Clara laughed through her tears. "I know. It's like everything broke, and now she's telling me she's still here, that I didn't lose her completely." They stayed on the phone, not needing to fill the space with much else. That note had filled every crack, every doubt. Every moment Clara had laid awake wondering if she'd ruined everything beyond repair. It was proof that Anna hadn't let go, even when Clara had almost done so herself. When Anna finally woke up and walked into the kitchen, she noticed Clara's red eyes and paused. "Did you read it?" she asked, almost inaudibly. Clara turned, crossed the room in 3 steps, and knelt in front of her. "I did," she said. "I read every word 100 times. Anna looked down, unsure of what to do at the moment. Clara gently cupped her face. "Thank you," she said, "for waiting, for trusting me enough to stay." Anna didn't speak, but her eyes filled. She nodded and leaned into Clara's arms, her small body pressing against her mother's like it was the safest place in the world, because now it was. Clara held her tightly, rocking her slightly. "We're okay now," she murmured. "We're going to be okay." That evening, Clara placed the note in a wooden box, the kind that once held jewelry but now held pieces of Anna's strength. The drawing she'd made during therapy, a hospital wristband from the night of the incident. And now, this note. Clara locked the box and put it back on the shelf above her bed, out of reach but never out of mind. It was a reminder not of the pain but of the climb back, of the courage it took for a little girl to speak when silence had once been her shield. The note stayed there like a lighthouse, steady, glowing. It didn't scream for attention, but it didn't have to. It had already changed everything. Clara found a folded note on the pillow with Anna's trembling handwriting. "Mom, I stayed. Thank you for coming back for me." It was the most beautiful confession she could receive. It wasn't just forgiveness, it was love recognized, a bond rebuilt. It was a child saying finally that she was here, whole despite everything. Months had passed since the courtroom, since the pool, since the first note. And in that time, something began to shift. Not all at once, but like petals that open slowly, almost imperceptibly, until one day the bloom is full and you can't remember what it looked like closed. Clara had taken charge of the space around her. She moved out old furniture that once held shadows and chose new colors for the walls. Soft ones that didn't pretend nothing had happened, but invited something better to come. The house no longer echoed with memory, it pulsed with life, small and steady. In the evenings they played memory games on the floor, Anna sometimes cheating with a grin, and Clara pretending not to notice. The chair Anna used now was bright blue, and it wasn't hidden in corners or brought out only when necessary. It was part of her rhythm, of who she was, and there was no shame attached to it. Her silence had become rare now, not because someone forced her to speak, but because her world had become safe enough to allow voice. School was part of that world too. Clara had been terrified at first. Letting Anna out of her sight had felt like walking a tightrope over all the what-ifs that still haunted her at night. But they chose the right place, supportive staff, trained therapists, and classmates who treated Anna as more than her chair. Clara walked her in every morning, watched her wheel confidently down the hall, turning to wave just once before disappearing into the classroom. The teachers sent updates regularly. She read aloud today. She made a friend named Sophie. She helped another student with a puzzle. Each message was a seed planted in Clara's chest, growing into something solid. The fear didn't vanish completely, but it no longer ruled her. It had been replaced by something stronger, a quiet belief in who Anna was becoming. Clara had stopped counting milestones and started witnessing moments. In the afternoons, they spent time in the garden. What began as therapy became ritual. Anna insisted on watering the flowers herself, even if it took longer, even if her arms ached. Clara let her. She'd learned the difference between helping and hovering. The Giraswa sunflowers had taken their time. The first ones had sprouted clumsily, leaning awkwardly toward the light. But they grew, taller, steadier, and with them Anna's posture changed too. She sat straighter, she smiled wider. She asked questions. Why did they turn like that? She once asked, pointing at the flowers angling toward the sun. Clara had smiled. Because they know where the light is, she answered. Anna hadn't said anything then, but she'd gone back to watching them closely, almost like trying to understand something about herself through their leaves. One particular morning, Clara came outside with her hands full watering can, gloves, small shears, and found Anna already in the garden. She was wearing her favorite yellow hoodie, the one with paint smudges on the sleeve, and was leaning forward in her chair, carefully misting the flowers. Clara was about to call her name, but something made her stop. Anna looked up, tilted her head toward one of the bigger sunflowers, and whispered something. Clara couldn't hear at first, but then Anna turned slightly and said louder, "I like the light. like Daddy did. The watering can slipped from Clara's hands, landing on the soil with a soft thud. She crossed the short distance quickly, heart pounding, not out of fear, but out of awe. Anna looked at her, her face calm, eyes bright, not with tears, but with truth. Clara knelt beside her, taking her hand gently. For a moment they said nothing. The words hung in the air, not heavy, but sacred. Clara finally spoke, her voice steady but tender. "He would have loved to see you like this," she said, turning toward the sun. Anna smiled. Not a small smile, a full one. The kind that reached her eyes and stayed there. Clara placed a hand over her chest, trying to ground the feeling rising inside her, grief, pride, joy, all braided together. She thought of the woman she had been months ago, uncertain, afraid, trying to rebuild something on unstable ground. And she thought of the girl before her, now still healing, still learning, but undeniably whole. The past hadn't vanished. The pain hadn't evaporated. But here, between the sunflowers, they had found something better than erasure. They had found forward. And in that moment, they were healed. Not perfect, but free. What part of this story touched your heart the most? Tell us in the comments. We truly love hearing from you. If this video meant something to you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. It takes us over a week to carefully craft each story with love and care, always thinking of you on the other side of the screen. Your support helps us keep bringing more stories that inspire, comfort, and connect. Thank you for being here. We're so glad you are. See you in the next one.